Russia and China want a new world order, one that will replace Western-led democracy with authoritarianism. How far are they willing to go? Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. History may look back at these past few weeks as the official start of a new Cold War. Last week, Chinese presentator Xi Jinping met with Russia's presentator Vladimir Putin. It was Xi's first visit to Russia since the invasion of Ukraine. It's also the first time they got to try out their new best friend super secret handshake. You have no idea how hard it was to choreograph that over Zoom. After their meeting in Beijing in early 2022, Xi and Putin released a joint statement saying the China-Russia friendship has no limits and there are no forbidden areas of cooperation, such as when Xi asked Putin to delay the Ukraine invasion until after China finished hosting the Winter Olympics. Probably because he knew it wouldn't take a lot to distract people from the Winter Olympics, since it's the Winter Olympics. I'd rather watch clouds than 11 hours of curling. In their latest meeting last month, Xi and Putin signed cooperation documents on a bunch of things like agricultural, basic scientific and technological research, and media. So expect China to continue helping Russia evade Western sanctions. They also made a 9-point statement on deepening the comprehensive strategic partnership. I'll have more on that in a bit. And cryptically, Xi finished the meeting by saying this.
Это как раз сейчас перемены, которые не было в течение 100 лет. Там вместе двигаем эти перемены.
Now that historical connection is significant. 100 years ago was when the first Wizard of Oz movie came out. Are they going to remake it? Makes sense, since one doesn't have a brain and the other doesn't have a heart. Oh, and 100 years ago was also the end of the Russian Revolution, when Russia's Communist Party took over and established the USSR. At the time, the US refused to recognize the USSR, but that didn't stop Vladimir Lenin. It only made him stronger, at least until he died a year later. The point is, the Soviet Union got more and more powerful. According to China risk consultancy Sino Insider, Xi's trip to Moscow could potentially be viewed later as the pivotal moment when the new Cold War became official and the bipolar world re-emerged after decades of unquestioned American dominance. American dominance is being questioned? Oh no, does that mean all those America's #1 shirts need to be reprinted with a question mark on them? And so the question is, how far will Russia and China go to create their new world order? I'll have more on that after the break. Welcome back. Unless we were demonetized again by YouTube. Remember, you can support the show by buying some of our merchandise, like this lovely Xi Jinping t-shirt on ChinaUncensored.tv/merchandise, or through direct support on our crowdfunding platform on patreon.com/ChinaUncensored. $1 an episode is all it takes. It's clear from the recent meeting between Xi Jinping and Putin that Russia and China see themselves in direct conflict with the West. And together, they plan to create a new world order to replace the Western-led democratic model. Maybe they have, as Freud would say, a death drive, which you can learn more about in the latest episode of our new channel, Gamers Unbeaten, The Psychopathology of Kirby. Link is below. Both Russia and China have been hit by Western sanctions, but they're getting around that together. It's a beautiful friendship. Oh man, they have friendship medals and best friend super secret handshakes. I'd say find someone who looks at you the way Putin looks at Xi, but if they look anything like Putin, I'd say run before you mysteriously fall out a window. From the two joint statements they just signed, we know China will be getting increased access to Russian energy and technology. Russia also said it supports China's Belt and Road project, so we're probably going to see more Belt and Road projects in Central Asia. That also helps China because in addition to making more countries dependent on China and less on the West, China also now has a new market for Chinese goods, as demand for those in Europe and the United States is on the decline. China will also be helping out Russia by buying Russian energy, food, and other goods boycotted or sanctioned in the West. In short, China and Russia don't want to be dependent on the West, and in particular, the US dollar. However, this wasn't a silver bullet for China or Russia, because neither has developed the advanced technologies that the West has restricted them from accessing. And none of this is enough for them to decisively get away from the US dollar. But Xi and Putin clearly see the writing on the wall and are headed in a particular direction. I mentioned earlier the 9-point statement on deepening the comprehensive strategic partnership. The statement says Russia and China oppose Western democracy and democracy versus authoritarianism framing, reject the US-led rules-based order in favor of a multipolar international pattern, and protest against all forms of hegemony, including unilateral sanctions and extreme pressure, and Western efforts to undermine regional peace and stability. Essentially, they don't like how the West calls them authoritarians. I mean, they are authoritarians, but did they really have to come out and call them that? So rude. Instead, they see China and Russia driving what Xi calls great changes in the world unseen in a century. That's a phrase he's been using with increasing frequency for years now. In fact, Chinese Communist Party rhetoric has become more and more aggressive. Xi is now directly calling out America. And recently, China's new foreign minister, Qin warned that conflict and confrontation with the United States is inevitable if Washington does not change course. This marks a return of China's aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy. And yes, I'm mad at how cool that sounds. The Wolf Warriors was the perfect name for my future children's Little League team. And China went and ruined it. For a while, many were saying China was retiring this hyper-aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy, and China was softening its approach. So why is it back, besides to purposely frustrate me? Well, for one, Xi Jinping is back and more powerful than ever, just like the stomach cramps you get when the McRib returns. In October, Xi successfully nabbed a third term in power, effectively becoming leader of the Chinese Communist Party for life. He also successfully pushed forward reforms that would give him more control of the Chinese government. But Xi is also probably realizing that the jig is up. Americans won't be tricked into thinking the Chinese Communist Party is harmless. A record low of only 15% of Americans view China favorably. And I'm guessing half of those surveyed online for this were probably Chinese bots. Even they don't trust the CCP. The mask is off, so no point in pretending to be nice anymore. Russia's invasion of Ukraine also screwed things up for Xi. Putin's actions forced the West to respond. And the Chinese Communist Party knows that if Putin's regime collapses, then it has no real allies in the fight against the US. China can't afford for Russia to lose, which is why you should be very skeptical of China's talk of negotiating peace in Ukraine. They don't actually care about Ukraine. They just don't want Russia to lose. They don't want to have to find someone new to share friendship medals and best friend super secret handshakes with. And finally, Xi may be looking at the state of things in the West and thinking, now is as good a time as any to assert China's power. Faith in Western financial systems isn't exactly good right now. Americans have about as much faith in their banks as people have in personal trainers that cancel sessions because they got the McRib cramps. And that's just one of many problems. The CCP is betting that countries that are looking for an alternative to the US-led world order could eventually be interested in its Chinese-style modernization, as well as turn to the UN and away from the dollar. But while it's clear Russia and China see themselves in a battle with the West, they are not ready for things to escalate. In their 9-point statement, China and Russia said the US and NATO are undermining regional peace and stability, and a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be unleashed. Which is also a little bit of a veiled threat. And wild coming from Russia. Russia saying someone else is undermining regional stability is like being called a groomer by R. Kelly. And this is why China is focusing so much on trying to portray itself as a peacemaker. They want to lead the multipolar world order, while making the US out to be the real aggressor. The sad thing is, some people might buy that. But perhaps telling during this latest trip, Xi Jinping did not revive his no-limits partnership assurance in meeting with Vladimir Putin. So, just like the last Cold War, the China-Russia alliance might be built on shaky ground. And China Uncensored would not exist without support from viewers like you. If you'd like to contribute, we recently set up a way to make recurring payments of any amount on PayPal. Link is in the description. But today I'll respond to a question or comment from someone who supports us on the crowdfunding platform Patreon. Today's question comes from Logan. Going back to 2020, you sounded an early alarm about the CCP virus. You also reported the rumor that the virus may have leaked from a lab. YouTube removed this very quickly, but I saw it. I think YouTube owes you an apology and monetary compensation. I think a lawsuit is in order. Thanks, Logan. So, even prior to COVID, we had lots of problems with YouTube. When we were in Hong Kong covering the protests in 2019, YouTube demonetized nearly every video we put out. It got so bad other media began covering it. But things changed during COVID. For the first time, YouTube was actually removing our videos entirely. And now, the FBI admits a lab leak is the most likely source of COVID. I'm not holding my breath for an apology from a multi-billion-dollar corporation. If anything, things have been getting harder on YouTube. More of our videos are being age restricted, which means it's demonetized and YouTube actively prevents people from seeing the video. This usually happens when we cover things like protests or genocide. The things the Chinese Communist Party would love to actively prevent people from seeing. Is a lawsuit in order? Maybe. But this show operates on a shoestring budget. We don't have the resources to fight Google. That's why your support is so important. I'm not exaggerating when I say YouTube would have run us out of business if it weren't for viewers like you, supporting China Uncensored on Patreon. Even $1 an episode could be the difference between the life and death of China Uncensored. So, thank you for your longtime support, Logan, and thank you for watching. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.